Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Thursday, the 18th of April 2019, and tonight's topic, game over. So tweeted Donald Trump with the image that you see here. No collusion, no obstruction for the haters, the radical left Democrats. Now, we're going to discuss that a little later on in the program. We're going to go give you a fairly in-depth review of the Mueller report, what's in it, what's not in it, and what it means. We're also going to go through the gold and silver stories, some crypto stories. We've got a backed update, very interesting story out of Binance, Australia. We've got two IPOs launched today, Zoom and Pinterest, money-losing companies with big valuations in the billions. We may know who Satoshi is one day soon, so says a famous person. And also we're going to take a look at the 1% rule again as it may impact cryptocurrency. So let's get into the stories. We'll just briefly mention that this game over, I kind of got a chuckle out of it because this is the type of pumper stuff we hear from the gold and silver people. Game over, game changer. So I did have to ask, what would Trump's next tweet be? Would it be about a silver shortage or a COMEX default or a gold backed yuan or JP Morgan buying silver eagles or maybe a reset or gold 10,000 or maybe even the greatest wealth transfer in history? I'm not sure he's in the same mentality when he says game over, but a bit of hyperbole there. And we'll see when we look at the Mueller report and the reaction to it, it probably isn't over yet. I'm not saying there's going to be a conclusion that will be deleterious to the president, but it doesn't look like they're ready to give up the game now. They have new information, and we're going to go through what some of that new information was that was in the Mueller report. But first, let's now go and take a look at the markets today and what happened, gold and silver, and then the crypto markets as well. Now, the general market reaction was, there's nothing new about the Mueller report. Where the conclusions are the same, no obstruction and no collusion, except there's more information. And none really of the information in there. There was one, I wouldn't say it was a bombshell, but there was some information. It was a WTF moment that Trump had, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up about 100 points, up 0.42%, and that was good for to get to 26,559. And NASDAQ down below 8,000 at 7,998, up 1.98, and then S&P 500 holding above 2,900 at 2,905, up 4.58. Let's take a look at the gold price. By the way, I'm not sure if you guys like or dislike the new faster delivery. Last night, I think I went very quickly. I said I was talking I think I called them David Shapiro. I think we're talking about, still can't remember his name. The little guy. Anyway, talks like this. Anyway, just let me know whether you prefer, maybe I'll do a poll, whether you prefer the faster delivery or the slower delivery. Someone told me, they sent me an email, they said, well, generally when I listen to you, I put you on, I speed up the video. I said, okay, well, do what you got to do. The reason I speak slower is that I know a lot of people, it's hard to process fast talking, especially when I know many of you are talking amongst yourselves in the chat room. So it may make sense if I speak a little slower. I'll probably tone it down a bit tonight and go a little slower. It's not an indication of what I think of your intelligence. It's just that I think it is easier to follow if someone is speaking a bit slower. All right, the gold price closed $1275.49, up about almost $2 to up 0.15, and I think that's about it. Now we're going to have tomorrow, well, today is Holy Thursday, tomorrow is Good Friday, and Sunday is Easter Sunday, so you're not going to see much gold trading and silver trading until Sunday evening. Maybe not. I'm not sure what happens on Easter Sunday. But in any event, the gold price was flat. The silver price, not much difference. I think the silver price, if the gold went up 0.15%, silver went up about half of that, barely went up at all, up a penny to $14.98. And quickly take a look at the unsustainable, out-of-whack gold-silver ratio. And what do we got? Still well above 85 to 1. at 85.15 to 1. Okay, let's get into some of the crypto stories. Lots of stories today. First, let's just take a look at the prices of the cryptocurrencies. Get that out of the way first. We're seeing a lot of talk about how this CoinDesk market, the widely followed MACD indicator, has turned bullish for the first time in over a year, backing up signs of a long-term Bitcoin bull reversal. So that's kind of, they're saying that the Bitcoin bear market is over, or this maybe is a head fake, who knows. But we're seeing stories like that. This one here in CCN. Next Bitcoin bull run will slay 2017's hype-driven $20,000 rally. And that's indicating what I was saying for the last over a year, that the next Bitcoin bubble will be a Wall Street bubble driven by institutional buyers, driven by insurance companies, driven by all these things that have been going on in the institutional space, the monies that's been pouring in from companies like Goldman Sachs, Nomura, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, CBOE, into stablecoins, exchanges, and well, we'll see what happens. Okay, well, we're going to go through a couple of stories tonight that indicate the broadening of adoption. Now, let's take a look at the 1 month of Bitcoin. This gives you a broader indication of what's been going on. Now you can see that big spike in context now over the past, this is since, it's really just a month. This is March 19th through April 18th, but you can see the gains have now consolidated. The price had risen from about 4,100 to about 4,700, made another spike up to about 5,200, came down a bit, but you can see we're right back near the highs of the past month. Let's take a look at the Ethereum chart. Very similar. Here it's fiddling around in the $130 range, makes a spike up to about 175. Another spike to 185, and currently is at about 175, 176. Litecoin, a little different chart because Litecoin already had made a big spike up from the 30s and 40 range to get to the 60s range, but then it made another big spike, in fact a bigger spike than any of the coins, all the way up to, other than Bcash, up to about 100, and then you can see those double tops there. It went back up, and then it fell sharply down into the mid 70s, and the last couple of days it has been trading in the low 80s, and right now it's about almost $83. And just to go a little deeper into down the coin market cap, cryptocurrency market capitalization tables, we'll look at BAT, which has moved up from, it was about 50th, and it's now almost in the top 20, and you can see over the last month it has doubled from about 18 cents to 36 cents. That is basic attention token. And the other thing is volume is increasing too. Binance put this out April 2nd, earlier this month, was the 12th highest single day gain in history at 17.4% for Bitcoin. Now, some of the other big days were obviously when the market was much smaller, as was the Bitcoin market cap, and the top 3 days when the price rose 27, 28, and 36% were in 2013. Now, those of you may remember, that was December 2013. That's when Bitcoin went from about $80 to $1,000 at the end of 2013. And then it collapsed again and just struggled along for a while. And then, so we've had these big tenfold increases in, generally they happen in less than a year. They've happened about 4 times since Bitcoin has started. But interesting chart there nonetheless, that the other times that it's had that, the other ones are mostly in 2013. There is 1 in 2017, or 2 in 2017, 3 in 2007, 4 in 2017, 5. It's actually 5. So the big years were when you had actually the big single day gains in Bitcoin. This chart I'll put up on the Smaulgld site tomorrow. That's a good place to go the next day to check out all of the charts that you may have missed or may want to take a closer look at and not have to stop the video. All right. Let's talk about Binance and Coinbase for a while. Binance is the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, but Coinbase is also moving on up there. Coinbase is in 53 countries. I don't think Binance has that reach yet. Now, Coinbase will probably go public perhaps this year. They say it has a market valuation of $8 billion, and they released some financial information. I guess they have to in the United Kingdom under some statute, and they say that their non-U.S. revenue growth was 20% last year in 2018 to 153 million euros. That's about $175 million. And they filed that with Britain's corporate registry. Overall, the estimates are, if you take their non-U.S., but the U.S. is probably their biggest market, and add it all together, they think that Coinbase generated $500 million plus in revenues last year. We don't really know what's going on in the first quarter this year, but it's probably better than probably the third quarter, even the fourth quarter of 2018. And they're saying in Europe, this is a filing, this isn't a guess, that they made a net profit of 6.6 million euros, or about $7.4 million. Now, if a company like Coinbase were to go public and it's profitable, I think it would be a massive deal. Maybe it won't, because all these companies, we're going to talk about Zoom and Lyft and Uber and Pinterest, investors don't seem to care that those companies make any money. I mean, look at Tesla. They all have market caps well over 10 billion, sometimes 20 billion, 30 billion dollars. But I would imagine a company in the space, the first crypto IPO, would probably be a very, very big deal, especially given the fact it looks like it's profitable. Now, they get their profits largely from trading, but also from payment processing. And if they made it's not a lot of money in Europe, $7 million last year. Maybe they lost money in the United States, hard to tell. But the fact that they're able to come close, where some of these other companies don't, I think would be a very big IPO. And the market cap they're saying is $8 billion. I think that's based on the last round of financing that they did. But let's talk about Binance. Now, Binance, we talked about yesterday, where the CEO was the first to step up and delist Bitcoin SV, because it's not really a CEO, but the guy who's promoting Bitcoin SV has threatened to sue people for saying, his name is Craig Wright, for saying that he's not the real Satoshi, that he's a fraud and so on. And so he and other Kraken and a few other exchanges delisted the Bitcoin SV coin. The price rebounded a bit today. It had been falling in reaction to this negative press they've received, but I don't know if it's a dead cat bounce, but it did bounce a little bit today. But the reason I want to talk about Binance is because I think a lot of people who have this mentality, they're going to shut Bitcoin down, they're going to shut cryptocurrencies down. Well, if you understand, and most people do, that governments are run by, in general, their donors, and are run by people who they owe favors to. It's not like they are the government and they just have this idea that they want to shut you down. They generally want to they want to remain in power, and they need donations, and they generally will put in place policies that are going to favor the people that donate to them. Now, when you see someone like this guy here, I can't pronounce his name, where he wants to help rebuild Notre Dame, you see people like Jack Dorsey, who is promoting Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. You see people like Elon Musk, who is promoting cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Doge. You have to remember, the Winklevoss twins donating to the Cuomo, or they're starting to form a political lobbying, not that they're joining up together to do this, they're doing what any capitalist does once they make a lot of money. They then try to secure their position by becoming a crony capitalist and preventing someone else from getting in it. That's why they now want regulation. Coinbase would love regulation. All of the Wall Street banks, they want regulation. Fidelity wants regulation. New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. That's how they make their money. They make their money in a regulated environment. They saw in 2017 something like $4 billion, $10 billion dollars made in ICOs that they had nothing to do with. They weren't allowed to engage in those, nor were the people who launched them probably either, in violation of securities laws. But the point is, if they see that there's that kind of money in ICOs and tokenizing assets, and when Fidelity sees Coinbase making all this money in trading, and they don't get a piece of it because they don't have an institutional or even they don't have a retail or institutional trading platform. They now have an institutional trading platform. Well, they all want to get in, and they need to get in. They need to have the regulations. Let's talk a bit more about Binance, because they are the world's largest trading platform. And we reported yesterday or 2 days ago, they are also profitable, and they make a decent profit and have made a decent profit over the last 6 quarters. And they're also saying that not only on most of the money that they make, they say 93% of the revenue comes from retail trading and only 7% from institutional, but they also have over-the-counter trades, which is institutional, and they say it drove near $80 million in Q1 profits. So Binance seems to be doing well. Trading is picking up, and again, this is all about money. It's not about anything else other than money, and when a lot of money is made, then people have political power, and they abuse it, they use it. But let's take a look at something else that Binance is doing. I think it's very, very interesting, and it ties into a couple of other stories about retail adoption. Now, they have a company called Binance Lite. It says, this week we saw the highest weekly volume since our launch in March. These are all new fiat inflows into crypto, a good sign that buyers are coming into the market. Now, if you just looked at this, you don't know what they're talking about. And then it says, buy your first Bitcoin today at BinanceLite.com. And then it says, buy Bitcoin with AUD. So they're saying, buy Bitcoin with Australian dollars. Well, what that is a project now. We're in Australia. We have to get our Australian friends here that follow the Smaulgld channel. You can buy Bitcoin now with cash at 1,300 newsagents across Australia. So that's what they're talking about. At this, they saw their largest volume increase since March. Well, it's not been around very long, but still, it shows that they are indeed getting some pickup on that area of dissemination or sales channel. And here's another article here. Buying Bitcoin is now made extremely easy for Australian. Around 1,300 stores across Australia are now offering Australians to purchase Bitcoins with solid cash. And this was through Binance. So not only have the trading platform for retail, the trading platform for institutional over-the-counter, they now have it for people walking around with Aussie dollars or in their pocket and want to buy Bitcoin. Now remember, it's not just in Australia. France, we reported a couple of months back, also now is selling a Bitcoin, and back then it was six tobacco shops. They're now up to about 6,500 shops in which you can buy Bitcoin. Anyone who's ever been to Paris, you can recognize here that these tabac shops, you go in and you can purchase Bitcoin in 24,000 eventually tobacco kiosks. And we also know that besides being able to buy in Australia and France, that there are things called Bitcoin ATMs, and they are proliferating. You can see here the growth in the ATMs. In January 2015, there were only 326 worldwide. Then it grew 54% in 2016, January to 501. January 2017, 965. January 2018, remember that was the height, the peak of Bitcoin, and then it collapsed after January 2018. They had, at that point, 2,060. But during the year of 2018, during the absolute collapse of the Bitcoin price, they doubled their Bitcoin ATMs globally to 4,120 as of January 2019. And now, as of April 18th, they have added another, it looks like over almost 500 ATMs to 4,605. Interestingly enough, nearly 3,000 of those, 65% of those, dispense Litecoin. And of those 4,600 plus Bitcoin ATMs, there are nearly 2,900 of them in the United States. This information coming from coinatmradar.com, and there you can see the chart. A very inexorable rise in the number of Bitcoin ATMs. So you've got these tobacco shops in France, you've got the news agents in Australia, you've got these Bitcoin ATMs all over the world, and you also have, in addition to Bitcoin ATMs, Coinstar, you know, the place where you go and you dump your change in and you get either cash back or you get a gift card from Amazon or some other place. Well, Coinstar, they now say they have thousands of their machines that are rigged up so you can buy Bitcoin in them. So this is the kind of thing that a lot of people, they say, well, you can't buy Bitcoin. I mean, you can't use Bitcoin everywhere. And they look at these, they don't look at it as an incremental thing that's happening. They expect it all just to happen at once. And if it hasn't happened all at once, therefore it's not happening. And what I'm trying to do is just show it looks like this creeping adoption. It becomes normal to the point where when you see a Bitcoin ATM, you just assume they're in there. Just like when you go to a gas station. Remember ATM? Maybe you don't. When they first came out with ATMs, it was a big deal to have one. Not every branch had one. They certainly didn't have them in gas stations. But now you expect if you want an ATM, there's going to be one in a gas station, and every bank is going to have an ATM, and there may be even places that they only have ATMs. They don't even have a bank branch. And I'm not suggesting that Bitcoin will be ubiquitous. We can buy it on every street corner, but there are now thousands, tens of thousands of places around the world where you can just walk in, pull whatever currency you have out of your pocket in whatever country you may be in, and you can purchase cryptocurrencies. That, you know, if that had happened overnight in 2012 or 13, that would have been a big deal. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens incrementally, as we've seen on our chart. Now, this was a story, Bitcoin bonds. This was like a game changer. It's a hype story. There's some truth to it, but it's not quite accurate what they're saying. Afghan and Tunisia issue Bitcoin bonds. This is Kabul and Tunisian sovereign crypto bond race. It sounds like what they want to do, and I think Tajikistan wants to do this too. I think they want to issue bonds based on commodities on the blockchain. I'm not quite sure it's Bitcoin. It was very hard to figure out what they were saying. But these are the types of stories, though. They didn't drive the price or anything. It says here, Bitcoin pumper story are real. 3 countries tell the IMF they want to issue Bitcoin bonds. I don't think they want to issue. It says that they do, but I'm not sure they want to issue a bond denominated in Bitcoin. That wouldn't make much sense to do it that way. The reason you issue a bond in a different currency other than your own is because that other currency is more stable and more people would prefer to have the certainty of paying back in that currency. So, for example, most emerging market countries will issue dollar-denominated bonds. It makes it easier to understand what people owe, and that's fine. And there was a period of time in the United States when, in the Carter administration, when the dollar was devalued because Nixon had removed the United States from the Bretton Woods Agreement, and you could no longer get gold for the dollar. And at the time then, the Swiss currency, the Swiss franc, was the most stable currency in the world. So the U.S. actually issued U.S. sovereign bonds denominated in Swiss francs, and they were called Carter bonds. And then, wait for it, Bitcoin-backed yuan game changer. Anyway, it's interesting. We are going to see this development of blockchain-type assets. Nothing to do with Bitcoin, but obviously something to do with Bitcoin because Bitcoin runs on a blockchain. Let's talk about institutions, and then we're going to talk about the 1% rule. But first of all, Bakkt. A quick Bakkt update. For those who've been following this channel, I've been talking about Bakkt, which is a consortium of Boston Consulting, Microsoft, Starbucks, and the New York Stock Exchange. And the idea is to launch a physically delivered Bitcoin futures contract where also you can have storage of Bitcoin, and then the platform or the entity is supposed to facilitate e-commerce with the use of the Bitcoin that you may receive as part of your transactions and trading on the backed platform. And they've yet to launch. I'm not sure whether it's CFTC issues or they're building out a bigger platform. They're definitely hiring a lot of people. They're poaching executives from Coinbase and other places. And it sounds like now they're going for a bit license in New York. And I'd be surprised if they didn't get it, because a lot of companies, I think it's about 8 or 9 now, that have bit licenses. So we'll just follow what happens with back and see if it gets off the ground. And then you have Ledger and Nomura. Now, Nomura is a big Japanese bank, and they are working with Ledger to come up with some custody solution, again, for institutional investors. They realize that there's demand for it, but they've yet to get that off the ground too. But there are other entities that do have custody. Fidelity has custody. Many companies now have custody for institutional investors. But let's talk about the 1% rule. Now remember, I've been promoting the concept of the 1%, and this isn't investment advice. This is just a simple way of looking at a portfolio and how you might allocate your portfolio towards speculative assets, like perhaps cryptocurrencies. But they could be biotech stocks, they could be mining shares, they can be any type of almost pie in the sky type of thing where you might get an outsized return, but you also might lose all your money. So I call it the 1% rule, because if you put 1% into a portfolio of something highly speculative, your risk really is only 1%. So if it's $100 and you put $1 in, you lose $1. It's probably not going to destroy your portfolio or your finances. If you have $1,000, you put in $10. You see how it goes up if you can figure out the math. But if it rises 10%, you make 10% on the portfolio. So if you have $100, you put $1 into a speculative asset, goes up tenfold. Now you got $10. Well, that's 10% of $100. If it rises 100-fold, well, then you have $100 in addition to the $100 you already had, or the 99. You've now doubled your portfolio. Now, that's something I've been talking about for a while, but it's interesting. Binance actually, and I even mentioned this too last night, or 2 nights ago, I was talking about how in France, they've decided to allow insurance companies to invest in cryptocurrencies. And my initial thought is, well, that's pretty stupid, because insurance companies need to have capital to pay off claims. And the last thing you want a stable company like an insurance company is the ability to go in and buy things like cryptocurrencies. But as I was talking, and I had just talked about the 1% rule, it just dawned on me, and I thought to myself, no, that actually makes a tremendous amount of sense, because it gives a insurance company, as long as they tell them that they're not allowed to invest more than a certain percent, it actually makes sense, because it's a way of adding capital to an insurance company's portfolio if indeed some of these things manage to hit. And Binance actually made the connection just like I had done today. And here's the law. We talked about this the other day. This was April 2nd. And I had mentioned here, France passes law to allow insurance providers to invest in crypto. And I thought, that's strange. Then I realized, I caught myself. I said, oh, that makes sense. As long as they're limited in the amount that they can buy, and I'm sure that they are. So Binance Research put this out today. How much are traditional insurance funds likely to invest in crypto assets after the introduction of the new French laws? And this is the 1% rule. Now, I don't know if Binance knows, but it looks like in their example that they may be able to invest up to 10%, which I think would be nuts. But here's an interesting way of looking at it. How much are traditional insurance funds likely to invest in crypto assets after the introduction of new French laws? And what they point out is currently, and I'm going to take a look at CoinMarketCap. Now they're saying, as of this, when they did this, before today's gains, that the total crypto market cap is only $156 billion. Okay. And if you have allocations to crypto, and they have here a conservative allocation of 1% of French companies, well, that's going to give you, if you put it in the other category, it could be $97 billion. Now, if just French insurance funds, traditional insurance funds, were to throw a very small, this was my point, a very small amount of their capital into an ecosystem that only has a market cap of 170, 180 billion dollars, well, you know what that's going to do. It's not like they can start. You can't make more Bitcoin. You can't make any more of most of these cryptocurrencies, and many of them are not going to see the investment. So I'm just going to scroll down here. I'm not picking on any of these, but like Stratus, Theta, Digitix, Futures, ABBC Coin, Factum, the ones down at the bottom that have market caps 90, 100 million, they're probably not going to see this insurance money. What you're going to see most likely, the top 10 are going to see this money. And it's not just going to go into cryptocurrencies, because there are also, a lot of them I'm sure would want to invest in something like Coinbase or Binance or something like that. But still, the bulk of the money, institutional money, is not going to go into, let me pick on a few more here, Aurora. It's not going to go into, probably not going to go into Doge or Hypercash or Gemini Dollar or Smaulgld coin or anything like that. So it's a very interesting point. Now, it's not just French insurance companies. If investment funds, let's say you've got insurance funds all over the world in every country, you have institutional investors, and really only have to look at it and say, if 1% of all of the institutions that have trillions of dollars were to invest just 1% into cryptocurrencies, you're looking at, I'm sure, at least 10 times the amount of, you're looking at least $2 billion. I mean, 200, you're looking at something at least tenfold from $200 billion. You're looking at possibly $2 trillion moving into this space. I'm not saying that as a hyperbole. I'm saying that as a very small amount. It's not out of the realm that would happen. Now, I've done similar hypotheticals. I did it with silver, and we know how much silver there is, about 800, 900 million ounces of silver that is produced out of mines every year. And I've done the speculation that if just 2 or 3% of the U.S. labor force were to save in physical silver, and they were to buy 5-7 ounces a month as part of their savings plan, that number could easily eat up half to 3/4 of the annual silver mining production, and would put a real strain on the silver supply. However, it's very unlikely that U.S. investors will do that. Why? There's nothing stopping them from doing it right now. That people are aware that they can buy. No one's stopping anyone from buying silver, so they just don't do it. Now, the difference here is there aren't laws now that are saying, let's allow people to buy 5 ounces of silver if they want. They're free to do it right now. They don't do it. Now, I had speculated if they did do it, then there would be a strain on the supply, but wasn't predicting that they would do it. Not that I'm predicting that institutions will do it here, but I think there's a far greater chance that institutions will put on the 1% rule mentality small amounts of their vast amounts that they can invest into these types of assets, and I think that may drive the price higher. Again, not investment advice, it's just it's the 1% rule. All right, let's move on to I think we have one other story. Yeah, well, let's talk again about Rakuten. Talked about this the other night, and I talked about it in August of 2018, the confluence of cryptocurrencies, e-commerce, social media platforms, and banks. And Rakuten will have all of them. We mentioned they're going to start selling Bitcoin, and of course, once the people buy it from the bank, they can then spend it on their e-commerce. They can get ads now from their social media platforms. They could be sold stuff through the ads on the social media platform, get directed directly to the e-commerce platform. They'll open up their crypto wallet. They'll buy the stuff on the e-commerce platform. They'll do their banking with the Rakuten Bank. I think a very big development as well. And I think we might see other companies merge and try to provide the same soup to nuts service. And so here is another article. Today it was in Forbes. After I had mentioned this 2 days ago, Amazon rival Rakuten is jumping into Bitcoin and crypto. And there again, just mentions everything that I talked about. But the guy, Eric Voorhees, who started Shapeshift, still is the CEO of that company. It's somewhat of a peer-to-peer crypto exchange. He's saying, and he's speculating today, as I was 2 nights ago, could Amazon rival Rakuten trigger the next Bitcoin bull run? I actually think it's not just Rakuten. It's the things I've been talking about that are incremental, that are happening with the ability for people, making it easier for them to buy cryptocurrencies and eventually easier for them to spend it. In fact, the reason you might get a bigger bull run is if people are still buying with the outsized expectation they're going to make a profit, and they don't have as many places where it's easy to spend it, well, then you're going to get hoarding. And that's why eventually I think you'll see a lot of companies realize it makes sense to accept cryptocurrencies for payment, because you're going to get transactions you might not otherwise have gotten. And with all that money, I mean, right now it's only $182 billion in value in cryptocurrencies, but if that goes to $1 trillion or $2 trillion, a good portion of that can be spent, and we'll be looking for places to spend it. Remember, it would make sense if, let's say, you had a small amount of cryptocurrency. Let's say you bought $1,000, it goes to $10,000 or $100,000 under the, goes up 100-fold. Well, maybe you don't want to sell it, put it in a bank account. Maybe you just want to walk into a car dealership and spend it. That would make sense if I was a car dealership. It's not going to cost me anything to set up the payment processor. So I would set it up, and then if someone came in and they wanted a high-end car, it'd be a lot easier to do it that way. And it's also easier for the person who has that outsized gain. They don't have to sell it, put it through their exchange, wait for the money to hit their bank account, then report it to their bank account, and then take the money out, and then go buy the car. They could just go directly and buy the car. So I do see that potential as well. All right, let's talk about the markets today. What happened? So first of all, earlier this last week, I think it was, Lyft went public. Now, Lyft is, I guess it's an imitation Uber. Ride sharing, all that kind of stuff. No profits. That is all you need to know. Well, they went public. I don't know, it came out at like $70, $80. Now it's like $58, and already they're looking to sue the people. So they're claiming the IPO is overhyped. No kidding. I mean, I don't have any sympathy for this, because if you look at the prospectus, and I have, it tells you all types of risks. It doesn't make any money. Clearly, these companies are unicorns. They're pumped and they're hyped by Wall Street. This is my point about cryptocurrencies. If you can pump stuff like this in Tesla, you can easily pump the crypto stuff, because you don't even have to worry about earnings. Cryptocurrencies don't have earnings. You don't have to worry about lunatic managers or CEOs going on Joe Rogan and making fools of themselves. So it's a lot, and you don't have to worry about paying off debt. You don't have to worry about doing another capital raise. A lot of these companies, the reason they're able to stay in business and continue to lose money every year is because they raise $300 million, $500 million, $600 million in an IPO. So they can lose like $80 million a year for 10 years. And once they realize that they're halfway through their money, they go to Wall Street again, and they just raise another $400 million, and they keep in business that way. So that's Lyft. But today we had Pinterest and Zoom go public. Now, Pinterest does a great job of losing money. They lost $70 million last year, and it went up 25%. Company's worth now $13 billion, where you can go and post pictures. Up 25% as Uber looks on and licks its chops. Now, Uber's really should be compared to Lyft, but I guess what they're saying here is, at least on your first day, like Lyft or Pinterest or Zoom, there's a market out there right now where you can lose money as long as you've got users or eyeballs or whatever you're supposed to have, number of customers. Wall Street can take you out. You have no potential to make money. You haven't made money in your 5-year, 10-year history. Doesn't matter. You can go out and get that $15, $18 billion market cap, and you can probably keep it. This makes sense. Now, Zoom raised even more. And they raised $350 million today, and their company is worth $15 billion. So it's worth $3 billion more than Pinterest. And that looks like that guy is probably the CEO, all excited. Probably sold. He's probably worth a few $100 million now from that. Also in the market, saying the first quarter growth might be more than 2%. Now, the second quarter growth, interesting. Not many people are really talking about this, but if people did get tax returns, remember that the U.S. GDP is largely driven 70% on spending. If there were significant tax returns, and there's mixed reports on that, that could boost the second quarter GDP, because people generally view their tax return as not money that the government had held from them or loaning the government money on an interest-free basis, but rather as somehow a windfall. And so when they get it, they go out and spend it. All right, let's talk about, the Mueller report. So, the conclusions of the Mueller report were given by William Barr a few weeks back, and there's really no news today. Nothing changed. As you can see here, Donald Trump tweeting out, no collusion, no obstruction. If you break it down, the collusion issue is not even in dispute. Not by Mueller, not by anybody. There were parts in the report, the excerpts that Barr gave, and then also in the Mueller report, which we saw today. And the conclusion was, even though Russia thought that Trump would be good for them, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interferences. Now, so the Mueller report indicated that Russia tried to interfere in the election in two ways. One through, which was very ineffective, these internet troll farms where they would post disparaging remarks about Hillary, and they didn't spend a lot of money in it. But with respect to that activity, it said that there was nothing there that the Trump campaign had anything to do with that. And in fact, I think last year, the Mueller people did indict a Russian troll farm for doing this. It was more for show, because those people are not going to be anywhere near the United States to be served with process. And the point is, however, they concluded that if they were here, they could get them for, I don't know, whatever crime it is, to buy $1 million worth of ads and fake bot names and make inflammatory statements about Hillary Clinton. So that was one area where they said the Trump campaign did not collude in this social media trolling. The other was in hacking. Now, interesting, this was new to me. I've always believed, because I've heard, that the Podesta emails were hacked by somebody simply because he had like a password 1234, or he fell for a phishing expedition. Somebody sent him a link, he clicked on it. In any event, the Podesta emails, however they were obtained, ended up with WikiLeaks. And the DNC emails, there's a number of theories there, that hack was either done internally with someone from a thumb drive, some say Seth Rich, or someone else. And the Clinton campaign has said that it was hacked by the Russians. And the reason they say it was hacked by the Russians is their private security group told the FBI that, and the FBI, without examining the server, took that as, yeah, it was hacked by the Russians. So the Mueller report just takes that conclusion and says, yeah, that the Russians hacked Podesta and they hacked the DNC. And then they say that Russia then disseminated it via two entities called DC Leaks and Gooficer 2.0, and then later disseminated it through WikiLeaks. Now, receiving that information, WikiLeaks, by law, as a journalist, is not, we know this through I think it was the Pentagon Papers, Daniel Ellsberg, 1971, where you have the freedom of the press, as long as you're not the one doing the hacking or coordinating the hacking or paying for it to be done. If you're just in receipt of it, you can publish it. Now, some people don't like that, but it is a very, it's a Supreme Court case. It's a very liberal reading of the freedom of the press, that the press can publish this stuff. So WikiLeaks published it, and of course, once it's out there, the Trump campaign can use it. Whoever wants to use it, it's part of the public domain. Now, the other interesting thing, and I guess it's somewhat new, is that there was some redacted stuff in there about harm to ongoing matters. And that's probably related to either Roger Stone or Jerome Corsi, because they're trying to say that, I don't know what the status of either of the cases are, but there were indications that they thought that those two people were somehow close to the Trump campaign, were in orbit with the Trump campaign. They were aware of these, this information was coming out, and then it came out, and so they suspect that somehow they may have been involved. Not quite sure what's going on there. But they then did mention that WikiLeaks came out in July 2016, and that Stone or Corsi or somebody notified the Trump campaign in June that WikiLeaks had damaging information. That's probably why they're talking to and why they say it's still an ongoing matter. And then they mentioned, and this is it's mentioned a couple of times, that Trump says he hopes they would recover Hillary's emails, Russia, if you're listening. And they try to say that was part of the collusion, which, I mean, it's a joke. I'm not quite sure that that's a collusion, but there are some people who don't have a sense of humor and actually believe that was part of the collusion. But the special counsel did not find that to be the case. But again, in this, they did conclude, mentioned it twice, that even though there were contacts with members of the Trump campaign and individuals with ties to the Russian government, and even though the Russians thought it would be a benefit to have Trump presidency, they concluded the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. So that's clear. So there was nothing really new there. However, and this I thought there's a lot in this special counsel report that I thought was amateur hour. I don't think it's a serious legal document. I think it's a political document. And I normally don't use terms like "give me a break" or "get real" or "are you kidding me? Are you serious? Come on." I don't talk like that. But that's what I was saying to myself when I was reading it. There's a lot of things in here. I'll give you an example. It's almost the disdain I have for the pumpers when they tell me, you can't prove that JP Morgan didn't buy Silver Eagles. It's like, that's not my, if you want to float an idea, some speculation, you have to prove to me that they do. I don't have to prove to you that whatever you want to believe in isn't true. If you can't prove to me it is true. And there was stuff in here, it's like, the special counsel wrote something to the effect that, well, we interviewed some people and we had asked for some information from them, from their electronic communications, and they didn't have it. They might have deleted it. And it made it sound like these people had obstructed justice and that they would, if they had that information, it might have been a bigger deal. And this is the language I have. Given these identified gaps, the office cannot rule out the possibility that the unavailable information would shed additional light on or cast new light on the events described in the report. So what they're saying is if we had more information that Trump colluded with Russia, we could have nailed them, but we didn't have it. Well, you don't have to say that. That goes without saying. That's like saying if we could have gotten them, we would have. That's all they're saying there. But they're trying to say that, well, we suspect that, there's probably information out there. We didn't quite find it. So even on the collusion issue, they want to make it sound like we turned over 10,000 stones. But, who's to say that there's not 11,000 stones out there that may need overturning, and we just couldn't get to them. So we're not going to rule out that if we were to be able to get to those 11,000 stones, that we might not have found it. That's not a legal standard. That's... Anyway, so there's some other things now I want to go through that are in the report. If you look at the page numbers, they actually spent more time on obstruction of justice than they did collusion. Now, they couldn't find collusion. They couldn't frame collusion. So they decided to focus on obstruction of justice. And this is where the parts where I was reading and what they give me a break and get serious and that type of internal dialogue I was having, because they listed like 10 things, not like 10 things, but 10 or about 10 things that Trump had done that, well, if you want to, you might consider this obstruction of justice. And they were all, they don't really even need dignifying to go through them. They make it sound like, well, he would have obstructed justice, but he didn't, because he told some guy to do something and the guy didn't do it. So if he had done that and the guy did it, then yeah, maybe we could have gotten him. Yeah, he called it a witch hunt. He fired somebody, or the whole idea of getting somebody on a crime is you lay out what they did, and then you say what they did meets the elements of a crime. That's how you're trained as a lawyer. You don't say, well, it could have been, but we didn't have it, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then he did this other thing, and then this other guy came, and then over here. That's what this sounds like. And the reason I say it's a political document, because it sounds like it makes Trump look bad, because it's saying he said this, and then he said that, then he asked this guy to say this, and then this guy to say that, and then this other guy, they use Cohen. Cohen said that Trump said this about Russia, and it's almost like gossip. It's nothing to do with whether there was obstruction or a crime. And in fact, the way it's really not a serious document is, at the end of all that, he concludes, well, we can't be conclusively sure that there was no obstruction, which means you can't make out your case. So all you did was just put out a bunch of stuff that makes Trump look like he might have, but you can't prove that he did. You admit you can't prove that he did. So 2.5 years later, you just say, I don't know, why don't we just put all this stuff in here? And this is the political part of it, and let someone else decide. Let the Congress decide if he obstructed the justice. Now, the Congress has no prosecutorial powers, but what they're getting at here is to undermine the president. If he obstructs justice, then maybe they can impeach him. That's not going to happen. This is why strategically I've said this has been a blunder from day one, because you've now spent, the Democrats got in October. It was anti-Trump, but I think the people that vote against Trump, some of them are only against Trump. That's the only thing that they're interested in. But for most people, and I would say 70% of people, of that 70%, maybe 30, 40% are really for Trump. Yes, we know 30% are really against Trump. But the people that are for Trump and the people that are neutral on Trump, they have issues that they want settled. Could be healthcare, it could be taxes, whatever it is. It's not that it's 100%. Obviously, the people that are for Trump are not 100% against Trump. But the people that are not foaming at the mouth to impeach him want stuff done. And when they elect people that aren't Trump, meaning they elect Democrats, they expect them to do something, not just try to investigate him and try to get him impeached. I would think they should spend the next 2 years, and they don't even have 2 years, finding a candidate who can present a vision that's different than Trump's, that may appeal to 51% or whatever it is, or the more electoral college votes to get elected. But it seems that they're all focused on just being against Trump. And that, I think, is a losing strategy. And unfortunately, the special counsel gave them stuff. So now they want to investigate. Nadler, the head of the House Judiciary Committee, he wants Mueller to testify no later than May 23rd. And there's a lot of things in this. I think this is a very losing strategy, because even in the report, it acknowledges that the dossier, which was a large part of the FISA warrants, was false. And what's going to happen is they are going to look at the genesis of not the Mueller probe, but the whole Russian investigation and the Russians and the spying on the Trump campaign. And they're going to be on the defense then, and they still the Democrats have yet to establish what they're for. And what they're for is getting rid of Trump, and they're for getting rid of Trump on this Russian collusion and now obstruction, because they can't get him on collusion. When it turns out, it will turn out. I mean, if you've read any of the background documents, it'll turn out that this was somewhat of a hoax. And then they're going to be on the defensive, having never established in the first 2.5 years what they're for. And now they're just going to be defending their actions over the last 2.5 years, trying to get Trump out of office on this collusion and now obstruction, and then asking for his taxes. And again, not defining themselves in any way, shape, or form. Let me see if I got anything else here. So they do cite Cohen, which I don't think, why would the special counsel's report cite Cohen, that Trump might have said something about Russia. It acknowledges that the dossier was fake, but yet it was used in the FISA warrant. And the biggest, this was the biggest one. It's of no consequence whatsoever, but this is what the Democrats are focused on and the media was focused on. I don't want to use these terrible words here, but they bleeped it out here. This was the big thing a lot of people were talking about. Trump said he was beeped after Mueller's appointment, special counsel. And this meant to everybody that, oh yeah, we got him now. This is Trump talking. He told Sessions, according to notes written by a guy named Hunt, that Donald Trump, when he found out that a special counsel was appointed, he slumped back in his chair and said, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm blipped." Okay. Now, if you're in receipt of bad news, you have been accused of a bank robbery, you are screwed. The FBI comes to your door and you didn't do it. You don't say, "Oh, this is wonderful. This is great." They're interpreting this as being like he's realized he's been caught and he's screwed. Now, the reason that this is disingenuous, even if that's all you knew, that is all you need to know. That's the only thing that was in the Mueller report. It said, "Oh my God, this is terrible. It's the end of my presidency. I'm screwed." He used the F word, but he said, "I'm screwed." That doesn't mean anything. As I mentioned, if you get an audit letter, you can say, "I'm screwed," not because you did anything wrong. It's just because this is not a good situation to be in, to be under investigation for a bank robbery that you didn't do, because you know that it might not turn out right, even as innocent as you may be. But the thing is, there's actually, in the same paragraph, if you want to read 4 sentences down, after he made that statement, which is all they printed in the media, was he returned to the consequences of the appointment of the special counsel and said, "Everyone tells me if you get one of these independent counsels, it ruins your presidency. It takes years and years, and I won't be able to do anything. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me." Yeah, like I said, it's not a good thing to be. It's better to write a book than to be under the special counsel's investigation. Yeah, it's not a good thing. And when I saw that, I said, yeah, he was. In fact, he's right. This has not been a good 2 years for him. Even though he's been, quote, exonerated or cleared of collusion, they're still bothering him about obstruction of justice. Now, remember, the obstruction of justice charge would not have existed but for the appointment of the special counsel, because now they're saying he tried to interfere with the special counsel. And it's the same thing where you get a knock on the door, we think you were involved in a bank robbery, and you say, "I wasn't there," and they say, "Don't obstruct justice." I mean, you can't win, and he's right. If you get a special counsel appointed against you, the presumption is, at least publicly, you must have done something wrong. Otherwise, why are they investigating you? Let's see if there's anything else. There's a couple of other things. We did get the scope. No one focused on this. The scope of the council's report. It says here that it was any links or coordination between the Russian government, individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump. Now remember, they didn't look into, this is strange, why didn't they look into, if Russia is notorious for interfering in elections, why didn't they do this with Jill Stein, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton, and maybe any of the other Russians? I mean, it's not like the Russians would only coordinate with Donald Trump. They had good reason, perhaps, to coordinate with Jill Stein or Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, too. Well, let's just assume they thought that Trump was the guy they wanted, according to what their research showed them. Well, that would make sense for them to coordinate with Jill Stein and try to promote her, because promoting her would take votes away from Hillary Clinton. It's obvious what they wanted to do was they wanted to go after Trump. They didn't want to find out the extent of Russian interference. And then it says any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation, which means then you can go after anyone who happened to be in the Trump campaign, if they were a foreign agent, they didn't register, if they made false statements on their tax returns or false statements on their loan applications, you can get them for that too. And any other matters in the scope of 28 CFR. But here's the thing. I thought it was interesting. They're citing Cohen. Cohen recalled speaking with Trump after the press conference about Trump's denial of any business dealing in Russians, which Cohen regarded as untrue. Okay, well, what's the point of putting this in here? Did the special counsel believe Cohen and believe, therefore, that Cohen could establish that Trump colluded with the Russians? Obviously no, because they said there was no evidence of collusion. But yet they put this in here anyway. Trump told Cohen that Trump's Tower Moscow was not a deal yet and said, why mention it if it's not a deal? According to Cohen at this time, in response to Trump's disavowal of the connections to Russia. But there's no reason to throw that kind of stuff in there. That's in there. In fact, this is the same type of, like, quote, salacious information that was in the Steele dossier. This is like the Mueller dossier. It gives a roadmap, not a roadmap. It just throws out a bunch of, not necessarily dead ends, but things that are legally insignificant, but maybe politically charged for the Democrats to spend some time on and make hay over, which, again, I think politically is a strategic error. None of this stuff here, even that, well, I'm screwed statement, that only appeals to people who are totally against Trump anyway, and they say, it's evidence that he's guilty. To the rest of the world, it either doesn't matter, and it certainly doesn't mean that. All right, what else do we have on the Mueller? I read most of it, and I just stopped reading it. I realized it just wasn't worth reading after I got to about 3/4 of the way through the obstruction of justice. Yeah, I'll just show this. I mentioned this already. While this report embodies factual and legal determination that the office believes to be accurate and complete to the greatest extent possible, given these identified gaps, the office cannot rule out the possibility that the unavailable information would shed additional light or cast new light on the events described in the report. That is a statement that's saying, well, you see, Mueller really believed that there was collusion. He just couldn't find it. He also mentioned the fact that he didn't get to interview Trump. Like, well, all he could have done with an interview with Trump gave him full access to everyone else in the campaign, full access to all documents that they asked for. All he could have done was gotten to lie, which would have been pretty easy because he would have misremembered something. So they didn't say that was obstruction of justice. He didn't rule that was obstruction of justice. He said, yeah, if you want to get him on that, we didn't, but anyone else interested? Here's 10 things that you might want to say Trump obstructed justice. And how did he obstruct justice? He obstructed justice on something they found which there was no crime. All right, let's see what you guys are thinking about all this, or whether you're just chatting amongst yourselves. Let me see if there's anything else here. Trump, we mentioned, had the game over and game changer. He put out a couple of videos during the day saying no collusion, no obstruction. And just before we got on air here, he said this. Jesse Waters, I guess he's a Fox guy, said Donald Trump was being framed. He fought back. That's not obstruction. Pretty much what we were just saying. And then he said, I had the right to end the whole witch hunt if I wanted, which is true. He could have fired Sessions and replaced him. He could have fired Rosenstein. He could have fired Mueller. He did fire Comey. I could have fired everyone, including Mueller, if I wanted. I chose not to. And in fact, he allowed, the only thing he did was talk trash about the investigation. He didn't stop the investigation. They went on for 2 years. He said, I had the right to use executive privilege, which is true. He didn't redact anything in the Mueller report. And he says, I didn't. All right, let's see what you guys are thinking. I think the real focus of all of this going forward is not, I mean, the Democrats are going to be beating a dead horse on this, but the real issue is going to be is what's now going to be found by the Huber report, the Inspector General report on the FISA warrants. When is Trump going to declassify the documents, and what is Attorney General Barr going to come up with as part of all of this going back and finding out the origins of why there was spying on the Trump campaign in the first place. Oh, I did promise to tell you there was a story about whether we'd find out who Satoshi was. I'm sorry, we missed that one. And guess where this comes from? This comes from our friend who's predicting $1 million Bitcoin by the end of next year. He says that he knows who Satoshi is, and he's either going to push Satoshi out of the shadows or he's going to reveal it. This could be another PR stunt from him, but John McAfee says he knows. One other crypto story was the Trump administration. We talked about this last night, how it was possible that the Trump administration might tax remittances from illegal aliens in the United States when they go back to wherever they came from, and that would encourage Bitcoin use. This one is not touting Bitcoin at all. This one says the Trump administration will cap money sent by the U.S., not tax it, to the relatives in Cuba to $1,000 per person every 3 months, which is basically none. And Cuba is highly dependent on remittance from the U.S., which amounted to $3 billion in 2016. Again, that will encourage some, I think, Bitcoin, Litecoin usage. Remember, Venezuela has set up a remittance page. So if you want to send Bitcoin or Litecoin into Venezuela, the government actually will act as the payment processor for you. And of course, the disadvantage there is I see exactly what you're doing, but it does show that the government of Venezuela recognizes that that is a viable option to get around sanctions, capital controls, and the like. All right. Let's see what we got. Remember, if you want to comment, me to see your comment, just put Smaulgld. If you put Louis, Luis, Luigi, Ludwig, I don't see it. I might see it. If you put Hey You, I might see it. The best way, if you write Smaulgld, it shows up in red and I can comment on your comment. All right, Anna's here, Crypto Shrub, Maple, everyone's here. Pablo. KZ Gixer says, isn't a stock market melt up more likely than a crash? Well, that's what that guy from BlackRock said the other day that we covered that. All right. Now, Maple Hedgehog writes, and this comment is held for review because it's like supposedly bad. I'm going to read it. I only follow my gut with women, otherwise I follow reason and logic. I wonder what the offending word in that sentence is. I only follow my gut with women, otherwise I follow reason and logic. I think the word the reason and logic that Google is, or YouTube is offended by. I'm going to show you that comment. There it is. It's now up. Gut maybe is a bad word. I don't know. I think it's reason and logic. Oh, we've got another one. Looks like KZ Gixer. He has got a comment that is held for review. Here's what he writes. Subscribe to the Cracking Crypto YouTube channel for that info. Now that one is probably because I'll show that one too. Because maybe they think that he's doing a little spamming. I don't know, like promoting a channel. Maybe that's how the artificial intelligence read that comment. Maple Hedgehog says, I got ATMs for Bitcoin in my city. Apparently, they charge a high percentage to use as service. Yeah, it depends on the machine, how they set it up. Remember, only looking for... I am looking at your comments, but it takes a while. But I'm really only... There we go. It says Smaulgld. Okay. Smaulgld, how can you invest in Binance or Coinbase? I thought only cryptos were available, like the Binance coin. Now, you can't invest in Coinbase unless you are an institutional investor and unless they are doing a capital raise, which they're not doing. So it's hard to find a venue for which to invest in Coinbase at the moment. Binance is overseas, so I don't know how you would do that. They're not public companies. Yeah, what they want is people like you thinking about it, so when they go public, you pay a 25% over IPO price on the first day. That's what they want, just so you can get in. It's all a scam in a way. The way what it's not. Well, it is a scam because what happens is the Silicon Valley people get into these companies, and what they do is they sprinkle money all around. So they maybe have like 100 investments, and they know like 90 of them are just crap. But maybe they're not. But they throw their money out there because they know that a $3 million investment could become a $2 billion payoff when they go public. But the scam part about it is when the company gets brought public, but it's not making any money. So how do they justify a valuation? Well, all the institutions get together and they agree in order to be let in on all the hot IPOs that they'll always buy something. And you see, this is why I think there's going to be a crypto bubble, because they've all now decided that profits don't matter. So they're just going to buy these companies, and if they don't matter, they can drive them higher. And as long as they're allocated their shares, the institutions first, on the first day of the IPO, or the insiders that have bought during the private equity rounds, they're going to make a fortune. They all layer it on, and then, even according to SEC rules, the banks can do what's called market stabilization transactions. I mean, they can go into the market and pump the price high. They could do that for a number of days or weeks after the... And then people just... Look at Tesla. How does Tesla maintain its market cap? There's just a lot of institutions that are willing to... Swiss National Bank has Tesla. Swiss National Bank probably gets in these IPOs too. So that's why I say it's a scam, because it's an insider's game, and it's the big money that takes care of the big money. And that's why I think they realize that cryptocurrencies, no matter what you think of them, you could think Tesla's crap, and you can think Zoom and Pinterest are garbage companies. It doesn't matter. They can pump them up to billions. Now, the other day, I want to mention this one last night. I actually got blocked by the person who put this one out there, which was kind of interesting. So I won't be able to show you the picture. But the person wrote, and they showed a picture of some modern art. Just looked like somebody took a crayon and, scribbled back and forth across the canvas. And the comment the person made was like, look at this crap. Like, this passes off as art, and somehow it's worth $40 million. And I responded, illustrating, pun intended, it's those in the market, not those critical of it, that determine the price. And that's the same with Bitcoin or Litecoin. Now you can short Bitcoin and Litecoin, and you can short Tesla, and you can short Zoom, and you can do all that. But the big money is buying that stuff. Big money bought Pinterest today, bought Zoom, bought Lyft, gonna buy Uber, gonna buy whatever IPO Wall Street has decided they're going to fund in consultation with Silicon Valley. So the point is, you can be logical and you can think you know better, and who would buy this crappy company? It doesn't make any money. Doesn't matter. They just prove it. It doesn't matter. That's why debt is unsustainable, and you insist you're right, and that artwork is crap, and who would pay $48 million for it? Doesn't matter what you think. You're not buying, so you don't buy it. There are people out there that are going to pay $50 million for something that you think looks like a bunch of scribbles, and that your kid, your 4-year-old, can do a better job with his finger paintings in. It still doesn't matter. It's the same with Bitcoin and Litecoin. You can trash it. It's worthless. It has no intrinsic value. Just a bunch of numbers. Whoever wants it. It doesn't matter. You could be right even in your mind objectively. But that's not going to stop Wall Street or institutions from bidding this stuff up. Look at I can't believe it. I've gotten over it. That you can come out on the public market with a company that makes no money, has no expectation of making. Look at Zillow. Zillow's been around 13, 14 years. Multi-billion-dollar market cap, doesn't make any money, doesn't need to, it doesn't matter. And they can go back to the market and they can raise more money than they can say, oh, we're gonna do mortgages, we're gonna sell houses, whatever it is, they can pitch the next pie in the sky and they'll get more funding and the price will go higher. It's just how it is. It's not how it used to be. And then people say, well, the free market will eventually take care of this. What free market? These are controlled casinos. You get your chips, and the insiders get more of them, and they get them first. All right, let's see if there's anything else there. What else do we have? Smaulgld's telling you pay attention to something going on. Smaulgld coins? I didn't know you expanded to crypto. It was a joke. What I was saying was, I do remember this part of the show. I was saying that when all this institutional money comes into cryptocurrencies, it's going to go into the top coins. It's not going to go into the bottom coins. And I was giving a list of the coins that were like in the 80s and 90s on the market cap, and I just threw in Smaulgld coin. I'm not issuing a coin. I have enough trouble selling the mugs. I don't have time to do issue a coin. Smaulgld mug coin. We can have mug coin. All right, unless I see anything else here. Now, David on Spaceship Earth. So I can see why this comment didn't make it. He says, hey, I got still a lot of the SHIT coins. Well, that one's not showing. I can understand that. Well, that's what they call them. That is parlance. Someone is misleading the public. Okay, says Roger. You know the word fat? I have found that the word fat is it's a bad word on YouTube. That does get, I don't know if it gets you banned, but it shows up as a problem. So, for example, Roger writes here, I'm going to have to show his comment. Agreed, a big, fat, ugly bubble Ponzi scheme that Trump has made worse. I think fat and ugly are probably, they probably look at those words and they think, oh, you're calling someone fat and ugly. It's just like the word retard. If you say that penicillin retards mold growth, that comment, someone do it right now, right? Penicillin retards mold growth. It won't allow me to publish it. It will allow me to publish it, but I'll have to approve a sentence like, and me saying this, YouTube actually goes through and hears the words. Like somehow they figure out what's said during the artificial intelligence figures out what's said during the podcast. And because I've said retard and fat and ugly so many times, they just assume that this is an offensive video, and it's not. We're talking about a big, fat, ugly bubble, and we're talking about mold retarding. I keep saying it, and if I was monetizing these videos, which I'm not, they would clearly say this is not suitable for advertisers because this Smaulgld guy and his people are talking about fat, ugly retards. That's how they would read it. That's not true. All right. Someone Wolverine says, Smaulgld, I actually hope the socialist Dems go after impeachment Trump 2020. Strategically, it's stupid. Maple Hedgehog, Smaulgld's a scam. I figure it's a better idea to get a piece of the casino rather playing on the tables. Oh, yeah. I mean, investing in an exchange. I mean, I don't think you can invest in the Comex or CME Group. They don't lose any money. They can't lose money. I mean, they run the casino. Although Trump lost money running a casino, I take that back. All right. What else? Aussies can't sell on Coinbase either. I am using livingroomofsatoshi.com. Now, that's Roger's comment. I'm going to show it. The reason that didn't come in because there's a .com and that would be viewed as spam, but I did just publish it. All right. Did anyone write my sentence for me? Smaulgld. See, William, I see your comment, but it says Smaulgld, and it's SMAULGLD, not GOLD. What do you think about the Genesis, the crypto miner in Sweden? Their ad says they're upgrading to a much better setup tech. I don't know anything about it. Maple Hedgehog, I don't know if I can post the link, but this is FinTrack here. I'll post that link. I don't know what it's about, but there it is. Fiona Whalen says, Smaulgld, the epitome of a unicorn is Theranos. That's right. Miss Holmes raised $9 billion, got a high profile. Yeah, I mean, people buy that stuff because they know each other. Hope I can find this channel. She does rock. All right. Well, that's about it for tonight. I want to thank you for joining me this evening. Don't forget to get your Smaulgld mugs. Don't forget to donate to Smaulgld in any way you can. It's all there on the screen. And not investment advice, but if you are interested in buying gold or silver, please do so through the links on the Smaulgld site. SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and Golden Eagle Coin, because I do get a small commission if you do purchase, and you pay no more nor less than if you visit those sites directly. So, if you've done your research, not from listening to me, but in general, you're interested in buying precious metals, please consider doing so through those links. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. The 1%. Where are we?